What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. Hey, if you like these videos, cool, hit the like button, as well as commenting below on any video that you watch, including this one. So, to think that Almost Famous is 20 years old is pretty incredible because it's a movie that really, truly, and authentically still holds up in this day and age. I've always enjoyed this movie for the simple fact of how down to earth it really is. And the reason for that is because we have somebody like Cameron Crowe, who's a very well respected writer. You know, he's written and directed stuff like Jerry Maguire and Singles. He wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He's a director and writer who is very cautious about what he did, at least up until 2000. And because this movie pretty much resembles, in essence, his life, it feels authentic to a T. I mean, when we go back and look at Cameron Crowe's career, especially when he was working, back in his teens, he was essentially William Miller, except he didn't do Stillwater. He was, interviewing with Rolling Stone, people like the Allman Brothers, people like The Who, people like Black Sabbath, people that we've come to know as some of the greatest rock stars of all time. And he was known for being a great writer, a great journalist. And that's why stuff like Fast Times at Ridgemont High happened, because it was just what he was known for doing and what he loved. He loved listening to music. Lester Bangs, who was played by Phillip Seymour Hoffman in this movie, was a real person that he talked to on a regular basis. So when you see William Miller talking to, of course, the Philip Seymour Hoffman, Lester Bangs character, it really does feel authentic. And that's why Almost Famous, to me personally, is one of the greatest films of all time, just for the simple fact of how down to earth and authentic it feels with what Cameron Crowe is putting onto the screen. And on top of that, this is a cast of characters, a cast of actors who are at the top of their game. There are people in this movie that will never see the heights of what they were in this movie. And there's actors in this movie that completely fell off the face of the earth. And there's also cameos. There's, people that have small bit parts that actually became huge actors later on. And it's because of this movie, it makes you kind of just forget about these people. It makes you feel like you're really with this band Stillwater. And so when this movie came out, I was super excited to see it. I remember watching the trailer, and I remember just being, I'd already loved Jerry Maguire. I already, knew who Cameron Crowe was. I had seen Singles and stuff like that. But Almost Famous felt different. And when I went to see it in the theater, I was mesmerized by what Frances McDormand was doing, by what Kate Hudson was doing, by what Patrick Fugit was doing, and especially people like Billy Crudup and Jason Lee, who were the main lead people in this movie as the band, because there's a couple other characters. But this world is so well represented that it just completely enraptured me in what I love about movies and cinema in general. There is so much heart in this movie, so much passion, that it just feels like a real situational movie that has fictional stuff, but also like real true characters like Ben Fontorres and, of course, Lester Bangs. Now, with that said, unfortunately, this movie was a huge flop. It made no money at the theater. I'm to this day, I'm a little disappointed with the fact that it never got Best Picture nomination. But Frances McDormand, who is an amazing actress, who is on her way to get another Oscar through Nomadland, she's fantastic in this movie as the mom of William Miller's character, the Patrick Fugit's character. And then we have Kate Hudson, who literally came from doing weird teen comedies to doing romantic comedies later on, and this is her Mount Rushmore performance of playing Penny Lane, who is just, she's a woman who envelops and just kind of, you feel her character through her aura of somebody who really cares about the music, but gets entangled into the rock lifestyle that just kind of unravels her in a nutshell, and unravels the whole situation of who Stillwater is. And she has one of the most sentimental moments is when she, after a concert of Stillwater, she's just kind of dancing around this hall that's a disgusting mess. And I believe it's Led Zeppelin that's playing this, but she's just dancing there. It's a quiet moment. It's a beautiful moment. And it's just a fascinating just feeling of authenticity of her character, that when we go to New York and she basically breaks down into basically overdosing on drugs, you really just get a sense of how sad her character is, how unfortunate that she has to go through this situation. Yes, Russell Hammond tries to fix it at the end, but what really needs to happen is she needs to do what she said from the beginning, go to Morocco and just find a new light for her character. But Kate Hudson just owns the role. She is so fantastic. And when she's from, of course, her father and mother, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. But this really feels like a performance that just comes from the heart and just really feels natural in its performance. But like I said, this movie was a huge flop and then became a cult hit later on. But it's just, this movie from the moment go is something of pure joy. We are introduced to, of course, William Miller's mom, which is Frances McDormand. We're introduced to the Patrick Fugit character as a young child. And William Miller's mom is one of those people that is very protective of her kids. She has another kid, a daughter played by Zooey Deschanel. And Zooey Deschanel is a very rebellious kid who doesn't see eye to eye with her mom, who's a more stricter human being who doesn't believe, going against the man, stuff like that. And Zooey Deschanel's character leaves and goes and goes with her boyfriend and just leaves forever until the end of the movie, which leaves the Frances McDormand character and the William Miller, the Patrick Fugit character, to kind of live on their own. But what makes Frances McDormand's character so fascinating is how she is so protective of her kid, but she kind of lets him off the leash because of how good of a kid he really is. She's almost like guidance, almost like a directional point for people coming to realization of who they are and what they are. And it's a career-defining performance of a career-defining actor or actress with Frances McDormand, and to watch how she interacts with William, how she interacts with Russell, how she interacts just by talking on the phone, just by how she has this like relationship hold on William Miller's character, truly makes her one of the most standout characters in the movie, as well as one of Frances McDormand's best roles she's ever been in. But what ends up happening is William Miller is really into rock after his sister has given him a bunch of records, a bunch of vinyl, and he's writing for stuff like Cream magazine. He's writing stuff for like the local papers, which gets the attention of somebody like Lester Bangs, who worked for Cream magazine, was very, very important, and was a low-level tier, not Rolling Stone style magnate who knew his stuff. And this is another role that kind of completely defined who Philip Seymour Hoffman was. And if it's anywhere close to who Lester Bangs was a druggie, but he loved his music and he saw the fall of the empire that was rock and roll from the 70s to the 80s and so on and so forth. And he kind of develops a mentorship with the William Miller character. And it's such a fascinating character development, such a fascinating mentorship, where we see this William Miller character who's almost like a lump of clay who's being molded, and Lester Bangs is like trying to be into this mold of clay to tell him basically to be careful of these people, be careful of Stillwater. They will use you, they will abuse you, they will try to twist and turn your reality, and you will kind of love it. You will love what they represent. But what they're doing is not the reality of what your situation is, because when William Miller is hired by Rolling Stone, it's to be a journalist, it's to give the truth, it's to give the ideas of who Stillwater is, because he's originally supposed to go interview Black Sabbath, which doesn't go very well, but the Stillwater story is very much more interesting. Idea of a mid-level band who is kind of grasping the terms of like coming into superstardom a little bit, but they have such problems that William Miller sees this, and Rolling Stone sees this as an opportunity to show off the band and their, all their warts and stuff like that. But Lester Bangs in this movie, like I said, as a mentor, he is just, it's a bravado performance from Philip Seymour Hoffman. When he talks to William Miller's character on the phone, it really feels authentic. He's like, we're not cool people. We're people that love the music, but we're not cool. We're not going out and doing drugs, and, well, he did drugs, but we're not going out to the parties and stuff like that. We're somebody who listens and loves and just kind of envelops the musical world. And that's not what's happening. The fact of rock and roll, I mean, there's this whole scene with Lester Bangs where he's talking to a disc jockey and he's just throwing records around. He's like, oh, this sucks and this is good, and Jefferson Starship and all that stuff. It really gives the authenticity of this world, which already has, from the get-go, of the look and feel, of the clothing, of the, the groupies, of the records, and everything about it just feels authentic, which is what makes this character dynamic of Lester Bangs and William work so well. But that leads into William Miller. Like I said, he goes to interview Black Sabbath, which is what, of course, Lester Bangs is hiring him to do. And we are introduced to the Band-Aids. And the Band-Aids, of course, are basically in control by Kate Hudson's character, Penny Lane. We have, of course, Anna Paquin, Fairuza Balk, and Bijou Phillips as the main supporting Band-Aid characters. And they're not in it very much, but Fairuza Balk has some amazing stuff in this movie, with talking to William Miller's mom, to, just her performance with like the revelations of who Russell Hammond is. Anna Paquin is just fun as a very young, precocious, sexy driven character. But these characters, like I said, once again, this is what authenticity is really like, when you have these characters representing a true to nature, true to life situation in these performances. And you see them and how they act, how they do unfortunately sleep with the band, how they just give a whole new kind of realization to what it's like to be somebody that's so passionate about the music, but be promiscuous in their own right, because it takes place in the 70s. So, and this leads to William Miller being kind of introduced, but even though he loves the band Stillwater, and Stillwater is a mid-tier band. Think of something like the Killers. They've recently just put out a new album called Fever Dog, and there's actually a Rolling Stone YouTube video that was put out a couple days from when this video posts. Basically, Cameron Crowe showing off the three albums that they produced for Stillwater to be in the movie, and they're amazing. If you get a chance, I'll put the link in the description. But Stillwater is a band that truly loves rock and roll, truly loves the idea of rock and roll, but they're on the cusp of the kind of commercialism and selling out to the nature of making money, which is what you do when you become an artist, a band member, whatever you want to call it. And Russell Hammond, who of course is played by Billy Crudup, who is an amazing actor in the Watchmen movie and all that stuff, he is a guy that is getting most of the attention. And the problem is we have Jason Lee, who's also in another. These characters are in career best performances, by the way, playing Jeff Beebe. And Jeff Beebe is the lead singer, but he feels so undershadowed from the Billy Crudup Russell Hammond character that there's a lot of friction there. They also have a couple band members who are the drummer and I think the bassist or guitarist, whatever it is. And they're not really much in the movie. They actually have a funny part on the airplane with, of course, Jimmy Fallon's character later on. But these two characters are important to the perspective of William Miller himself. And I haven't talked about Patrick Fugit, which I will in a few minutes. Watching these two characters that are so at odds with one another, that are so at odds with the idea of how this band should move forward, it really shows the difficulty of bands trying to stay together. Bands that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years have gone through these situations. You look at Metallica or Aerosmith or Rush or, just any of these bands, and what they have to do is sometimes band members leave, sometimes they just find a way to get through it, drug abuse and all that good stuff. And you start to see it kind of, it's in its like not infancy, but it's kind of, you start to see the cracks as this movie plays along, as William Miller kind of sees the situation at hand, as he's able to kind of write his story for Rolling Stone. And Jeff Beebe is so just strained with his relationship with Russell Hammond that they're constantly fighting with one another. But it's so fascinating to watch because they're such three-dimensional characters that you really feel like the anger, you really feel the hurt that these characters go through. Russell Hammond is just, he's so kind of a chaotic mess that the Jeff Beebe character just can't handle the situation at hand. There's many scenes in this movie of Russell Hammond where he's just constantly fighting with the Jeff Beebe character, but it's so kind of mesmerizing to watch that you just kind of go with it. But you just kind of see that this developing relationship's starting to fall apart, but they're trying to find a way to get through it. And there's several scenes, including like, for instance, the t-shirt where it's just Russell Hammond with the rest of the group in the background. There's the whole situation of the girlfriends. There's the whole situation of just how do you get past for two people that are like the alpha males of this group. And it's just really kind of interesting to watch. It really just shows you how well honed and well produced the script was from Cameron Crowe, that he's able to write these characters with his, I'm sure, wife at the time of Nancy Wilson, who was of a heart. And you just really feel like that they love each other as a group and like a real true brothership, but you can really feel that they want to go somewhere, but they really feel constrained by their just kind of wants and needs. And like I said, Russell Hammond has some amazing stuff in this movie, between the I'm a Golden God when he trips on acid, to his moments with Penny Lane, to his eventual he keeps screwing over William Miller because Rolling Stone needs an interview with Russell Hammond, because like I said, Russell Hammond's almost like the kind of the important part of the group. And then their band leader, the guy who's running the band until Jimmy Fallon comes in, is played by Noah Taylor, who was in Vanilla Sky. Noah Taylor is amazing in this movie as their, band manager. He has to deal with all the problems, he has to deal with all the situations, and you really feel the authenticity of a band manager. And then you have the situation like with Noah Taylor's character, who there's a situation where Russell Hammond in the middle of the set gets electrocuted from wiring that has gone bad, and they decide to cut the concert short. Well, the promoter, who was played by Mark Maron, amazing. There's a lot of amazing cameos and bit parts in this movie, by the way. Forces them to either you perform or I'm going to sue you. And they're like, screw you. They're like, we're going to buy a gate. They run through the gate, and we see Mark Maron come behind them. But you can see the kind of the devastation on the Noah Taylor character as he's watching this band kind of fall apart in his eyes. And then in order to make more money, they have to go to a corporate promoter of the band's corporation that they're under. And that's when Jimmy Fallon comes in. You can just really feel the sadness in Noah Taylor's eyes and his heart, that he knows that everything is changing. But Jimmy Fallon as the kind of the promoter is awesome. It's Jimmy Fallon doing Jimmy Fallon, but it's such an amazingly scummy, like grimy performance of just a guy who doesn't really even care about the characters that or about the band he's dealing with, but it's just an amazingly kind of awesome performance from what Jimmy Fallon is doing. And he was with SNL at the time, so doing a performance like this was something you could probably see him doing. For instance, in the Blue Oyster Cult, the cowbell thing. So, but our surrogate through this movie with William Miller. Now, I've talked about William Miller throughout this review, but William Miller, who was played by Patrick Fugit, who hasn't really done much to this kind of scope, is a character, like I said, is a lump of clay, and you start to see a performance of a character that struggles to love a band, but sees the underlying issues of that band and the corporation that is becoming slowly involving with their situation when they leave the bus and they go into a plane. And what makes William Miller's character so fascinating and so raw is he loves this band so much, and he is conflicted with his love of the band to the fact that he needs to write for Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone, of course, has some amazing actors in its own right in the movie. And you watch this character become friends with Penny Lane, kind of have an infatuation for Penny Lane. You see him kind of see the world of rock and roll. We have, all kinds of, people behind the scenes that we see in this movie, between the Band-Aids to the roadies, to just the musicians and stuff like that. Peter Frampton plays one of the roadies in this movie. Zack Ward plays one of the roadies in this movie. We see, just these characters in this world that kind of, it kind of melds his mind a little bit, almost like if he's on drugs and stuff like that, but he's really not. It's just something that kind of twists and contorts his world view of these characters, because they always say don't meet the people you admire, because when you do, you see the warts and all of these characters. And William Miller starts to see the world around him. He comes from a very isolated community with his mom and his sister, but when he's able to get into this world and just kind of see it, how it unfolds, it's a very kind of, it's almost like a sad and depressing feel, because when he gets to the eventual conclusion where he writes the story for Rolling Stone, which he has tricked the Rolling Stone into believing that he's like 25 years old, to when he meets his sister at the airport, you see a character that has been broken down and has kind of truly become not infatuated with the idea of rock and roll anymore, but just a character that is so heartbroken about what he's seen. That is just fascinating. He has like some amazing stuff that he sees in this movie. He goes to like the Hyatt Riot House and stuff like that in Los Angeles. He goes to all these places and he sees all these band members, and it's like a dream come true. But you can almost feel like Cameron Crowe felt, where he was mesmerized by the whole scenario. But Cameron Crowe tells a story in that Rolling Stone video about how the Allman Brothers, especially I think it was Greg Allman or something like that, who was very paranoid about what Cameron Crowe was like writing down and all the tapes that he had recorded for this interview. And you really feel that in this situation where this band is so just forcefully just broken in a lot of respects, that William Miller just sees the underlining issues, and when he writes his journal or writes his interview, and the band, who with all its problems that it's had with everything that is said, denies the interview, which kind of completely ruins who William Miller is. And it takes a character like Russell Hammond, who is truly kind of, I think, loves William Miller as almost like a brother or son in situations, to fess up to the fact that he screwed over somebody who truly cared about their band and was just doing what he needed to do. Because there's talk throughout this movie about these people that are journalists who are the enemy. And it's not that it's not that journalists are the enemy, it's that journalists need to tell the truth, and the people that they're telling the truth about don't like that. You see it in modern day society now, with certain individuals who throw the media or throw journalists under the bus, and that's the situation here. And the band is so scared, especially Jeff Beebe is so scared of what William Miller is going to do, that he completely doesn't trust what William Miller is doing there, which makes it more fascinating that they kept William Miller on there, because William Miller represents the true fan, the true representation of why they want to do what they do. But they don't see the true lining or the true underlining problems of their aspect of their drug abuse, of their drinking, of their promiscuous sex and stuff like that, cheating and so on and so forth. And when William Miller goes to Rolling Stone to talk to, of course, Rainn Wilson's in this movie, and Terry Chen. Rainn Wilson plays, I think he's like the main editor, like the senior editor of Rolling Stone. Like I said, I'll get into the bit parts here in a second, but we have Terry Chen, who's playing Ben Fontores, who was actually a good friend, or was the editor for, of course, Cameron Crowe when Cameron Crowe was writing for Rolling Stone. You really feel the sadness for William Miller when they deny it. And you watch this group of people that work for Rolling Stone love what William Miller is doing, except for the one woman that works there who's just like completely just like, why is he here? What are we doing? It just, when you see the eventual conclusion, it really fills you with hope that, people can change, like Russell Hammond and stuff like that. So these are characters, like I said, that I keep repeating as authentic characters. They feel like characters that you could literally go out and meet today. William Miller feels just like a normal kid that got put into a situation like Cameron Crowe that's really kind of cool and kind of mesmerizing to see. I'm sure that there are bands like Stillwater that have these issues, that have broken up, that have drug abuse issues. This is why they're all such an authentic band, even though they're not real, like Spinal Tap, because you feel like the nature of who they are, and you're given context and ideas and revelations, and just like you come to the context of that they're characters that are basically not up to par of who they represent when you see them on stage. So it's really fascinating to see. Like I said, you never want to meet your idols because of this situation, as we see in this movie. But there are a couple actors in this movie, like Eric Stonestreet and, of course, Jay Baruchel. It's incredible. It really is. Like, these actors you don't even think about in 2000 are given bit parts, and they end up becoming actors that either work for, like, Adam Sandler or, Judd Apatow. It's just, like, that's what makes the movie kind of fun to watch, because he also has, actual band members, like I said, with Peter Frampton, who just come in for bit parts, who are friends with Cameron Crowe, that were willing to do these small things. So it's really nice. It kind of gives a really cool, oh, I know who that is. Oh, that's Rainn Wilson. Of course, he's going to play, Dwight Schrute later on. So I really like that kind of stuff. I really like the fact that Jay Baruchel plays a very big Bowie fan, which is kind of nice. And Eric Stonestreet has an amazing kind of small bit part where he gets a phone call from William Miller's mom. And, and William's like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. And Eric Stonestreet's like, yeah, she's a handful. And it's a pretty funny part. But with that said, it's an amazing eclectic cast that is at the height of their careers. And it's sad to see that a lot of them didn't really get much more work after this, or what they were offered is nowhere near the performances that they would give in this particular movie. So yeah, it was sad, but in this situation of the 2000 with Almost Famous, I think it's perfect casting. So this is getting into the nerdy stuff and getting into like the specific stuff. The world that represents Almost Famous is incredibly authentic in its look and feel, between the 70s look of the world that's around it, to the buses, to the stage, to the guitars, to the clothing, to the vinyls, to the hair, to the production design. I guess you could say the production design and art design is incredible in this movie. It has a really 70s authentic feel that is not there are a lot of movies will have great authentic feels, but because Cameron Crowe is so used to this society and used to this world and lived this world, you know that he put a lot of effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into creating a world that really feels like something you have lived in at some point. And like I said, when they travel around and when they're at the Riot House and that they're, in New York and they're in, wherever, Cleveland, they go to Cleveland, believe it or not, it really does fit how this movie represents what it's trying to do about journalism in the 70s. And there's a really funny joke when they go to Rolling Stone where they talk about faxing papers and stuff like that. Talk about like a fat piece of paper can fax in like 17 minutes and stuff like that. It's really funny. I'm going to leave it at this. The music is what this movie represents, is what this movie is trying to give you a look and a feel. This movie has like one of the great soundtracks in the history of soundtracks, which, Cameron Crowe's movies always have great soundtracks. Singles is a great soundtrack. But this movie has, every time a song from a famous band, whether it be Led Zeppelin, whether it be, Elton John, every time a song comes on, it's like you're being transported with that song to the scene at hand. The most famous scene in this entire movie involves Elton John's Tiny Dancer, and you know it, you've seen it, you've probably seen a clip of it if you have not seen this movie before. But it's right after Russell Hammond's character has taken acid, they're on the bus, they're not really talking to one another, and all of a sudden, somebody starts singing Tiny Dancer, and then somebody else starts singing the song, and it basically crescendos into everybody singing the song. And I already love the song to begin with. I've loved Tiny Dancer since I can remember. But just like for just a single moment, just for the single iconic situation that is being played out, to watch these groups of individuals just kind of get into the song, to truly know what it feels like to love music, to love who they are, and to realize that they're doing something that not a lot of people can do, which is, make music. Tiny Dancer just represents a very cool, very calm, and very just kind of uplifting situation that is very dark and disturbing and just kind of chaotic that this movie represents. So with stuff like that, with Tangerine and with from Led Zeppelin, with just the Allman Brothers and stuff like that, it's just an incredible thing to watch, and that's what gives it its heart and soul. There is a sound, like a score in this movie, but the soundtrack really represents why this movie is special, like it is, and really gives it, like I said, a more authentic feel to the movie that is Almost Famous. And why Untitled, which is Almost Famous's director's cut, has not popped up online digitally, I don't know. But sometimes director's cuts are not great. They really aren't. But sometimes you get a James Cameron or a Peter Jackson or a Cameron Crowe who literally take the movie that they've been given or that they have cut down for the mass audiences when it's released, and they are given the opportunity to make the director's cut. Zack Snyder is doing this with the Justice League. And I truly think, like with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the director's cut, which is called Untitled, which is kind of awesome because there's a lot of band albums, their first album is an untitled album, it's just the title of the band, and it's a more fleshed out world. You get more scenes with Francis McDormand, you get more scenes with the band, there are longer set pieces, there are longer set song lists, there's just so much more added to it that makes it like 30 minutes longer, and it truly makes it a much better movie. And I think, once again, if you look at stuff like Kingdom of Heaven, I think this would have truly defined a masterpiece of cinema, because Almost Famous by itself feels like it's missing something in the aspect of what's been cut out, and then when you see it placed back in the movie, it feels like a totally different movie. It really does, and it represents a truly kind of artistic view of somebody who has lived this world and is giving you a really true, very heartfelt look into what the aspects of that situation can be. So if you haven't seen Untitled, if you can find the DVD or Blu-ray somewhere, definitely watch it, because it is definitely an experience. And if you have seen Almost Famous but not seen that, definitely check it out. But that'll do it. That is my somewhat lengthy take of Almost Famous. Almost Famous is, for only 2 hours and 3 minutes, is a very deep movie and a very existential movie, and is Cameron Crowe's best movie of everything I love, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but this movie really, like I said in the beginning, truly feels like a magnum opus of what Cameron Crowe was known for. And 20 years later, it just feels like a movie that just breathes something authentic. And I said authentic a lot, a lot in this review, but what can you say? Almost Famous, such a great movie, and yeah, if you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for? So yeah, that's my take on Almost Famous. There's many more scenes in this movie I haven't even talked about, many characters I'm sure I've missed out on, but you know what? Experience it for yourself. So there you go. But yeah, that'll be my take on Almost Famous. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Almost Famous. Do you like it? Do you not like it? I actually kind of want to know if you've seen Untitled, the director's cut. Do you like the longer version of it? All that good stuff. But otherwise, if you like the channel, hit that subscribe button. Join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. Hey, if you like this video, cool, hit that like button. If you dislike it, you know what it is what it is. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next video. Peace out.